It's Mr. Christopher with the Funkatopia radio show. And, we love having guests on, and we definitely love having guests on that have a lot of purple background. And my next guest absolutely, positively, not only has a purple background, but also has a wife that has a very extensive purple background. Just extensive backgrounds all together. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Joshua Welton.
Hello, 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 hello. Thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure to be here with the fellow Funkatopians as well as the purple people all around happening.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey for you. I know we're gonna be talking about a lot of things too. One of the things I'll tell you about the audio is that for whatever reason with Zoom, as soon as I get done talking, there's about a second of it's waiting for me to say something, so it kind of mutes you out. So we'll just I'll be cognizant of that. I'll try to keep my laughter to a minimum because it's using me as but anyways, so one of the things I wanted to definitely talk about is we've got three things I want to talk about. Obviously, purple background. We want to talk about, I want to talk about Your Will Be Done Ministries, and I want to talk about the purple movement. So I want to talk about all things purple, and especially the purple movement. And I'm, really, it's been an honor to kind of check out some of how your ministry has been building as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too, but I definitely want to make sure that we leave a lot of time to talk about the purple movement, because that's the biggest thing that I can think is easily the most important in nowadays for what we're dealing with now. But let's start at the beginning. Most people knew your wife, didn't even know you until they knew that you were in the background probably, and some of the hardcore fans, obviously. But most people knew your wife, Hannah, who was the drummer for Third Eye Girl. So kind of tell me a little bit about your relationship with Hannah, and, did you guys meet before you met Prince? Were you already married? What was the story between you and Hannah?
Hannah and I met in 2010. And so we got married in 2011. And so we were discovered, or she was discovered by Prince in 2012. So it was like boom, boom, boom. We met in 2010, got married in 2011, and she got discovered in 2012. And so we had already been married, and he found her on YouTube, and she had flown out to meet him the first time. I believe it was August of 2012. Or July, I take that back, July of 2012. And then in August 2012, early August, is when I flew out and met Prince. But we have been married October 8th, 2011, been happily married ever since. We're both 21, both virgins, very excited about that. I know it's a lot of times TMI for people, but it's true. I waited and she waited and we made it. So that's pretty much sums it up.
I'm so glad I was muted, because that's just amazing. Because you don't hear a lot of stories about that. I think the first time I heard, I always, grew up in church, and, you always knew what you were supposed to do, and the way that, you had to kind of hold yourself in order to make sure that you were going to be the recipient of God's blessings, and to do things the way that God had intended. That was the path that you needed to take. That was how your marriage and your time together was really going to be blessed, as if you pay attention to what he's telling you and what he's saying to you, and just go by what's written. And the first time I'd ever heard that was a couple that my mother knew, and they dated this whole time. It was like they dated for, I want to say they dated for probably, I don't know, 4 years, and they never even kissed. They held hands, but they never even kissed. They held out, and I just couldn't, as a teenager, I just couldn't fathom it. This is crazy. Anyway, let's get a little bit of background here, because I know that with Bobby Z and Bobby Z's wife, Vicky, Prince was, when Vicky got pregnant, he was very, very involved in just the pregnancy. He was always checking up on Vicky. Was he really kind of overbearing, or not overbearing, but was he really attentive when Hannah first got pregnant?
Extremely. It was very it was emotional, but it was a good emotion that I felt because he jumped on it. And I think I've shared it maybe once or twice publicly, but he sat me down. It was me, him, and Kirk in Studio A, and he said, "So what's going to happen?" And he like came at me and he was doing like this. He's like, "So what's going to happen?" He was like, "I want to be in her life." He's like, "What about school?" He said, "Should we build a school?" And he asked me about building a school for my daughter because, he mentioned something about elementary, middle school, and high school. And he had a very strong philosophy on how it should be taught and things of that nature. But the point is, he was very attentive, very watchful, very cognizant, if you may, because we still were going to different concerts and things of that nature, and he was very cognizant of the surroundings, no smoking, all types of stuff. So he really I feel like he took it in and just adopted the whole situation as his as well, and that just made us feel so welcome and warm, because that's just how we felt toward him as well. So it was great to see him even step out on a limb and want to really be involved in Azaria's life. And it's just thinking about it just brings back some good memories.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, some people just like, hey, what can we like get like clothes? What can we do? Like, hey, can we build a school? Can we do that? I'm also interested in how you got involved with Prince as a producer. I mean, so where does that actually cross over? Because the first time I'd ever seen you, I think you were standing behind Hannah playing tambourines or something at some concert. And then, so how do you go from that to, does Hannah say, oh, my husband does production work? Is that kind of how it works?
It's a really fun story, but I went from playing cowbell to producing, and it's so interesting because Mr. Cowbell became very famous backstage. Mr. Cowbell was very arrogant. He had his own dressing room with his name, Mr. Cowbell, on the walls, and he had his own jet and plane. So he was a whole different world over there, Mr. Cowbell and Third Eye Girl. It was a big funny inside joke. But yes, so one day, it was about 9 months that I was just getting coffee, making sure that the girls were taken care of. Interestingly enough, a brother by the name of Michael Carter spoke to us before Prince ever discovered Hannah. And he said, there's a big opportunity coming to Hannah. And he said, God wants you to support her. And as you support her, God will exalt you. This is a true story. It was a prophecy that came. And he said that, and a producer, Josh, is going to want to work with you. And he said, it's not because of your talents and your gifts. He said, it's going to be because of your conversation. So I believe I had some heavily instruction before Prince ever came into our life, not knowing it was Prince. Obviously, Michael Carter didn't know it was Prince either. But when he spoke that to us, it definitely resonated on the inside of us. And it was like, wow. So we were just in expectation. By the time Prince came along, it was like, wait a minute, is this what was going on with that word that we received? And so after Prince had discovered Hannah, it was about 9 months where I'd go to Caribou and make sure everybody had their coffee. I'd go to and fro, picking them up from the Paisley to the hotel. And I'd be at the hotel from morning till evening as they rehearsed nonstop. And then when evening time came around, Prince was really excited to show Trevor and I, Donna's husband, what we worked on all day. It was like his thing, let's show Josh and Trevor, what we worked on all day. And over time, he would start to invite me in the studio sessions just to watch. And then he would sometimes ask me questions. What do I think? And I'm like, I want to know what you think, and that was usually my response. But then I started to see that it was slowly developing in relationship through conversation. Our first conversation was like a 2-hour conversation about Jesus. And I'll never forget that because I was so excited about that because, I enjoy talking about Jesus. But other than that, we just kept going in conversation. Literally. I mean, we talk about things from Egypt to Africa to Jesus to music, and it would just constantly go in that way. And then one day he goes, we need a producer. And I'm sitting there, and we're up on the second floor at Paisley Park, right next door to his office in the conference room. And he's like, we need a producer. We need he literally described me to the T. He was like, we need a young producer who knows how to program. And I'm like sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, Hannah and I literally laughed. We literally laughed in the meeting. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, well, let me just work on Studio D. So Studio D is a smaller than the room that I'm in, and at Paisley. And he one day walks in and gives me some files, and it's files from Janelle Monáe's, forget what song at the moment, if I start singing it, but a Janelle Monáe song. So he gives us some stems from that. And then there's another producer, or two other producers from Switzerland in the other room. And so he said, may the best producer win, is how he said that. And so I'm like all the pressure. This is Prince. We're at Paisley Park. We got two other producers. I'm in a smaller studio by myself. They're in Studio B with the big speakers. I'm in these, and I'm just like, all right, Lord, let's go back to the bedroom like I did back at home in Aurora, Illinois. And so then I started to work on the track, and boom, boom, boom. It was just banging through the walls. And I started to hear how people were saying how Prince was digging what I was doing in the other room. And long story short, I obviously ended up winning that. And then the next time he gave me stems were from Fix Your Life Up, from the Third Eye Girl album. And I did a couple remixes to that. And the moment I put it in, I didn't know what it was. He just gave me a USB drive, and I'm like, yo, this is Prince's vocals. And so when I made a Prince folder on my computer, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making a Prince folder to put the stems in. And it just, the rest is history.
That in itself is just incredible to me, because, you know, Prince has said, and in print, I might add, I can't even, if I have to track it down for you, I will. You've probably already heard it and read it, that, you know, Prince trusted you a lot as producer. And even for, I guess it was Hit and Run Phase 1, you actually got co-producer credit, and he actually, you know, turned the knobs over to you. And what was it like when did you know that you had kind of crossed over? Because somebody had, let me see if I can, the person that had asked a question about, I think it was Joshua OK, without an O, JSHUA OK on Facebook, asked, you know, when did you know you were set in the studio, that you were good to go, and you realized at that point in time, when you're kind of crossing over from, you know, I'm in a test phase now, to, okay, this is the real deal right now. Where was that point?
Well, first of all, shout out to my brother Lyle. Thank you so much for asking that question. You know, I say it like this. It's actually, it went from critique to collaboration. And that's how it kind of adjusted. It was never a moment where he kind of knighted me and said, now we can collaborate. It was kind of like a lot of Prince and I's relationship was, in some degree, it sounds funny, but telepathic. We just understood each other. And I think that's a lot of times we were spiritually connected, if you may, where we just kind of knew each other. And we just knew that it went from critique to collaboration. And a lot of it, we would email back and forth the tracks. I never could send him a quote unquote rough track, because if I sent him a rough track, he would only like to give me critiques on the actual song itself. If he could hear, he didn't want to hear past if the vocal was too tucked down, or if the snare wasn't hitting hard enough or whatever. I had to send him basically complete roughs. And once I figured out the Prince way, is when I knew in my heart that he was going to more so have room to hear other things concerning the song versus turn this up, turn my voice up, all that kind of stuff. So he put me through a boot camp basically on how he likes songs being mixed. And I just learned the Prince way. And that's when he could quote unquote trust me as far as mixing goes. And it was funny because one day he goes, Joshua, do you know how to mix? And I'm like, well, yeah, because I produce my own records. And so I was like, yeah, I put things together, but I didn't know that he meant mixing and mastering, basically start to finish complete songs. Because to me, mixing and mastering are two different careers. And so when he said, well, you know how to mix? And I'm like, well, yeah, I know how to mix. And he put me through the Paisley universities that we called it. And I just learned and learned and learned. And I put in the work. I asked thousands of questions to anybody that I knew who knew how to mix. And I just kept going until finally it was a place where it was like, okay, now I know how he wants things to sound. Now we can actually collaborate musically versus him trying to critique how things sounded in the mixing. So it was a gradual, graceful process that turned, from, like I said, from critique to collaboration.
And when did you get the note? When did you finally find out that you were going to end up being a co-producer on Hit and Run?
Well, it started with Artificial Age, and those are the two albums that I got the producing credit from. And it was one of those things where you just didn't know that was happening. You kind of had an idea. Wait a minute. Is he writing to the tracks that because he gave me a task, if you may. He said to me, all right, Josh, this is going to be hard. He sat me down. He said, I want you to make 5 hot tracks. I want you to make 5, like, really, like, actual hot tracks. And I was like, okay. He's like, and I was expecting more. Because, you know, I have my own personal work ethic that didn't hit me as hard as I thought it was. So I was like, okay, he wants 5, I'm going to give him 10. And so that's what I ended up doing. I gave him 10 tracks. And one of the tracks was Way Back Home on the first record. I'm trying to remember other tracks, but I just know that he was looking for certain tracks. I didn't know it was for him. But he ended up taking those tracks and coming back with his voice on it. And I'm like, what is going on here? So it wasn't like, I want you to produce me. It was nothing like that. It was like, all right, I got a challenge for you. And then he went to Studio A, recorded his voice on it, and I got it back. And I was like, why is he doing this? You know what I mean? And then it slowly became an actual record.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, what is one of the coolest production tips that he taught you that just kind of totally changed your view on how you produce stuff? Because I know to give you an example, I know with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, it was that always recording in the red, you know, always instead of, you know, just kind of bouncing in the red, it was like hot. It was like really, really hot. The track was very, very hot, like bumping hot. Is there a technique that he taught you that were like, I would have never thought to do that ever?
The one thing that I'll never forget is, you know, it's kind of like the name of your organization, Funkatopia. It's space. Right then and there, he said that's where the funk is at. So if you're listening to a track, just the little stuff in between that gives it a little space versus it being, it's got a little bit of a space in it. That little space changes everything. And so for me, that is where the funk is at. And if things don't have space, it ain't funky to me. So that's really what really shifted the dynamic of production for me.
And I had heard that he had said that quite a few times before. But, you know, I always found it interesting, and something that I just discovered probably this year is that every song that you listen to of his, especially starting at Around the World in a Day up, it wasn't so much on like albums like 1999, but moving up, any pattern beat pattern that you could think of, that, you know, if you had an 8th beat, you could, you know, there was always something going on. So you always had, you know, the bass snare, but then everything in between, you know, there may be like a hi-hat or something in the background going, or some. There was always something that was filling in every 4th note, regardless, and it was always something. It didn't matter what it was, whether it was maracas or a tambourine or something. So no matter how you particularly grooved on a particular song, you always had something to latch onto. If it's the bass, if it's the kick drum, you can latch onto that. If it's snare, that's your thing, it's there. If you like that kind of, you know, the rhythm and, you know, just the rhythm section in the background, he had that. So he always would layer things upon layer, but he always did teach that approach of, you know, there's so much in the space. And I think he got back to that Artificial Age. I think that was something, you know, songs like And even moving in forward to the hit and run stuff like June and songs like that, where he went back to the space. And I think it's an amazing, it definitely is an amazing production technique. But one last question about Prince. Don't tune out Funkatopians, because I really want to talk about stuff that's very, very important. But I do want to save time to talk about some really important things that are going on in our world today, which is the main reason why I have Josh on the show today. But I guess there was a couple of different questions. Cody Breedlove asked how much Third Eye Girl material is left in the vault that you are aware of. So that's one of the questions from the fans. So let's start there.
Okay, well, Prince was always making music. Sometimes I think Hannah went in by herself to lay some drum tracks. As far as what he did with them afterwards, sometimes we just didn't know. So as far as fully recorded vocals, Third Eye Girl stuff, that is left to the Purple Vault. And at this point, I don't really know of any songs, at least, that weren't released that are not a part of any release that we already have. So I guess that answers the question.
So basically, Cody, he's not going to give you an answer, because I can name a few. I can name Octopus Heart, Menstrual Cycle. There's like a bunch of instrumentals, and maybe they were just kind of jam sessions, so they weren't technically songs.
Jam sessions go. I mean, that is the songs from start to finish that he wanted to release. I believe that it was the intent to continue to work on things, but at this point, there's nothing really much more I can say about that.
All right, so let's kind of segue. Let's segue into working with Prince, and then to going to your ministry, because Prince obviously is a Jehovah's Witness. You're a born again Christian. You had already talked about the fact that those discussions actually came up, where you would talk about the Bible and just types of things just in general. Were there any things that you guys kind of felt a little bit conflicted on, that he didn't really he just wasn't feeling from you, or vice versa, as far as your belief systems? Because there is a lot of similarities between Christianity and Jehovah's Witnesses, but there's also these weird little offshoots that Jehovah's Witnesses have, and they may feel the exact same way about Christianity. They have these weird little offshoots. What are those things that you feel like, maybe you got to a topic and you're just like, okay, this is probably where we stop talking?
Honestly, the beautiful thing about, at least I can only speak for Prince and I's relationship, is we were avid listeners, and we didn't just try to listen to each other to try to prove our personal point, but it was really about hearing one another for understanding. And at the end of his life, actually, I can only, like I said, speak on what I believe. I without a question, believe that he is a born-again, spirit-filled Christian. And it's not because of anything outside of his own confession and him speaking. I remember talking, and he said, man, I got to relook at this Jesus that Josh was talking about, because I hadn't heard about Jesus this way. And so people close to him, even afterwards, started speaking to me about how he thought about Jesus, even how he prayed when we prayed over the food, when we would eat together. It was way different from when we started. And so we grew together. And I think that I say that extremely humbly, but I also say that as repeating what people have told me that he said to them. Because, I know a lot of people, even after he passed, a lot of people were his best friend. And honestly, at this point, I like to be able to say things that are either verifiable, that were written down by the news that he said, and or just telling the truth about what him and I talked about. But truthfully, I believe that I look forward to seeing him again in heaven. And it's nothing against anybody and their beliefs, but from my personal experience, that's a fellow brother in Christ.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people kind of get lost in the mix. I mean, again, there are a lot of very, very similar beliefs between Christianity and Jehovah's Witnesses, just how you carry out your ministry on earth is the biggest difference between those religions. And that's kind of, so I don't have any reservations that I think we both know where he's at. So, and yes, it's, I think we know where he was spiritually, and he was always like that. So, which brings me to, he's passed. We could obviously go down some more rabbit holes, but I want to be cognizant of the time because I want to make sure that we can cover the Purple movement. Going to, after he's passed, what led you to say, you know what, I think I need to start a ministry. I feel like this is good for me, and this is good for my family, and I just feel like this is the next step. This is something that you knew that you were going to do for a very, very long period of time. And the second part of that question is, it's primarily an online ministry, and so there's that part of it. Is that because of everything that was going on with coronavirus that it was set up that way, or is that just how you wanted to establish yourself in the beginning? Or what's the story about the organization of Your Will Be Done Ministries?
It was honestly prayer. I was at a crossroads. People who don't know that we were into ministry for whatever reason would say that we should go full-time music. People who know that we're in ministry and may not know about our music background for some reason, they say you should go full-time ministry. And so for me, I had to pray because I knew what we could do. I had an idea of what we wanted to do. And I had to pray. And we're at a crossroads. And I literally went for a walk, and I was speaking to the Lord, and I said, what do you want us to do? I don't know what to do. And this is by the time we had already moved back to Illinois from Chanhassen, Minnesota. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? And I heard the Holy Spirit speak to me, and he said, Your Will Be Done Ministries. And I said, oh, you want us to start a church? And as I continued to go down that walk and that obedient just response to him, I found out that he wanted to do an online church. So for the last 2 years, we've been doing an online church far before the coronavirus. And it was one of those things that it wasn't something that I had seen before. I know a lot of churches broadcast their live services within their building online, and that's like their extension of the live service. But our actual service was online, and it's been going on for over 2 years now. And so that's really something that the Lord laid on my heart to do. Far before, all the churches are online now because of the coronavirus. So just to answer your question, it's not because of the coronavirus or anything else. That's just where I felt like the Lord led us to start. And it kind of gave us a head start, if you may, because of everything that's been happening, unfortunately, in our nation and world. So, that's really where it started. It started in prayer and asking God, what do I do? Because I didn't know what to do. And I'm so glad that he called us to do that, because it's been such a blessing to us. And we've gotten to meet some beautiful people globally that have been a part of our ministry.
Again, I was not aware of your ministry until we had some Funkatopians come through and said, because we do our live show. I normally do a live show on Tuesday nights, and I would always see people kind of come in a little bit late, and it was like, and people were just coming to me on a regular basis and going, oh, well, it's because Your Will Be Done Ministries is on the same night as you. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Really, is it?
Yeah.
And so I couldn't move it. I couldn't move my show. So I was just like, all right, well, I'm just going to just watch some of these shows afterwards. But it's actually really cool. The level of production video wise and everything that, you guys have done has just been amazing. And I was, lucky enough to have, friends and people from Funkatopia that just were really, really avid about making sure that we knew about you and that you were, kind of in place. And so let's talk about something that's really, really important, because you actually have a project, I guess it's called a movement, but it's a project called the Purple Movement, which is something that's been very, very, with everything that's going on in the world today, and with the violence and protests and riots and everything, and all the racial tension that is in this country right now, you came up with what's called the Purple Movement, and kind of give us a little bit of a synopsis of what your idea was for the Purple Movement and how people can get involved in, and just the basis of what the Purple Movement is.
Well, thank you very much once again for asking about it. It's something that Hannah and I both are extremely passionate about and believe that it's necessary. I know you were saying it's a project. Another word that came to my heart was a mandate, because it's something that is so important for us to bring together, come together in unity and in power, because I believe that as we come together, there's going to be so much more solution that we can come up with versus division. So it was inspired by I believe it was either a presidential debate or just I just saw an argument happening between a Republican and a Democrat. And for me, I'm always just centering myself, figuring out, okay, what can I identify with? What aligns with my spiritual beliefs? What doesn't compromise truth to me? And so as I'm watching the arguments and people fighting over each other, I just naturally, because of my mother, she's very much so an advocate in conversation, saying, okay, I hear your point and I hear your point. How can we figure this out to come together? And that began to come out of me. And I started to think to myself, how can we come together? And naturally, I started to think about what is the one thing we can all agree upon versus it being something we disagree on. And I'm like, okay, we have 50 states, one nation. I'm like, okay, then obviously, the flag came to mind. And I looked it up and I said, what would happen if instead of it being separate, what if we merge red, white, and blue together? What would happen? And it happened to be purple. And this was after Prince. And so it just kind of all made sense from there. So principally, it's not having to do with changing the colors of the American flag, but the principle of coming together and the power of unity and reconciliation is something that is really the heartbeat and the blood of this movement and this mandate that we have to come together, to listen, to hear, and to bring some solutions.
Yeah, and for those who have not tuned in and actually looked, the website is thepurplemovement.org, and you actually have some steps that people, that you feel that the police need to go through as far as their training and things like that. Give us a little bit more insight as to some of the ideas and things that you feel really kind of would make the difference in some of the steps that you are proposing in this Purple Movement.
Thank you very much. We have 3 policies on the purplemovement.org that, and just much prayer, counsel from white, black, brown people, people in law enforcement, outside of law enforcement, people in government, outside of government. I don't like doing anything without getting counsel because I believe that with the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And so just through prayer, I just went before God and just like I said, ask questions. And the biggest underlining idea behind the 3 policies, we have one called police conduct, another one called the great conversation, and another one called the racial ratio. And the underlining message in all of them is literally circling around reconciliation, equality, accountability, awareness. And that's something that's really important to us. The very first one, police conduct, it just outlines what we believe is important for police officers to be accountable to, and also the citizens to be aware of being unarmed, or not necessarily just aware of, but like we said, be accountable to a new policy of if you're unarmed and a police brutally beats you or you die, there should be some protocol in place. Because it's not an anti-police movement. It's an anti-police brutality movement. And so it's trying to figure out ways to equalize and make sure that police officers are accountable to what they may do to someone unarmed in any situation. And so it's treating them as if they are regular citizens, just like we are, just to bring that equality and not have any red tape for police officers because they are in law enforcement, and just trying to figure out, like I said, to equalize it so that we can bring some equality to it, and I have red tape to discipline something of nature. Secondly, within that, we have this thing called the grace period, because being that we want them to be immediately arrested if someone is brutally beaten, they're unarmed, or they die as a person of interest, we also want to know that this grace period happens. Because of what happened with George Floyd, people were so angry, and rightfully so, because there was no communication or understanding on when someone would be charged or arrested. So we want to eliminate that with this grace period. And then lastly, we want the probable cause hearing to be public for accountability's sake. And like I said, each one of these policies, you're going to see it going back to accountability, reconciliation, equality, and awareness.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that I thought was interesting about it. I know that we've seen a lot of activity online about people putting together these different types of petitions, and they say, let's, everybody sign this petition that we need to defund the police, or sign this petition, that we need this, that, or the other. This is something that is very, very different in that everything is laid out as to the plan of action about how things need to occur, especially in results of police brutality, and how just a step-by-step guide, and it's like a rule book that was actually written. So it's very well thought out and very well planned as far as a good approach. Have you gotten any kind of feedback from any type of government involvement, anybody from city or state or anything like that may be interested in kind of reading more about it and taking it to a more serious level beyond just people that are just signing a petition?
Yes, like I said, before I even finalized and did the videos, I was seeking counsel from people within government, outside of government. One of the gentlemen that I spoke to is one of my very dear friends and mentors. His name is Ed Dopel, and he's Pastor Ed of Resurrection Church, but he's also served in Desert Storm. He also is a police officer, a chaplain. His son is in the police force, and he's an older, white, 65-year-old man. And I say that because I want to show people the diversity and just listening and learning from people from all generations and all colors. And so it was so important to me to get his advice, because not only has he served in Desert Storm and has such a beautiful story in that, but he also is someone who understands both sides of the fence, spiritually, physically, and also lawfully. And so one of the things I talked to him about and helped me even in the racial ratio is understanding how the police force works. And he said, man, this would be fantastic if something like this was implemented concerning the racial ratio, and so forth. So yes, I have talked to people like that. As far as the goal, the more purple noise that we make, I know we're going to be able to reach out to even more city officials and so forth and make some things happen, and we're working on that. So I'm really excited about that.
And I wanted to make sure, sorry, there's a little pause because I want to make sure that I mute myself so if any noises happen on this end, it doesn't interrupt what you're saying. There are some questions from people that were fans, obviously. Before I even move any further, it's really important that I do a shout out, and I know you know who this person is. A shout out to Patricia Welch, who was very, very adamant in making sure that we got connected, and that she was one of the first people and ongoing people that regularly would tell me, when you were broadcasting and, keeping everything in touch. So definitely want to make sure I do a shout out to Patricia. The other thing is that, so here's some fan questions. The first one is a little bit more basic, not necessarily have to do with the purple movement, but we're going to be moving. It kind of goes in this direction. I think it's just questions about racial injustice and everything else. Yolanda Everett asks, how did Prince feel about systemic institutionalized racism in this country? Did you actually have any discussions about it? And she also asked, did this prompt his writing of the song Baltimore? I think we actually know what prompted that. But she said she has signed the petitions and she's honored to be a part of the movement. But her basic question was, did you guys ever have any discussions about systemic or institutionalized racism?
Without a question, I think yes. I know yes. We had conversations about that, and I think the underlining morale behind it is something that everyone knows about concerning him and masters and music, and how important it was for ownership and actually owning your intellectual property, but also creating things that people can live off of. And so, like he mentioned, building a school for my daughter. So one of the things that we're doing also in continuing the legacy of Prince is not so much about just music, but also creating something in a world that people can live in by going to the root and dealing with the root versus just the fruit of what we've been seeing with our eyes. We're looking at the underlining understanding of why. Just if you think about him lyrically, it's not always just black and white what it means. You can interpret his lyrics as well because he's extremely poetic. So for me, just the underlining without being extremely specific, it's more so about the underlining idea of what can you create? What can you come up with? Are you going to just follow the rules of the policy? Of course, but are you going to create policy? Are you going to think about, are you going to listen to people to help bring something to the world, to help fix something? One of the ways that Prince did that, obviously, we were a part of was Baltimore. And we were there on the front lines because of the issues that happened with Freddie Gray and so forth, Mike Brown, and these things that happened, we were there. And so not just musically, but also financially donating things and also being a part in helping people who are on the front lines. So for us, it's understanding that not only music, not only policy, but all of it coming together and really making a change at the root of things so we can build something and be a forest of things that people can be shaded with and people can eat the fruit from. But you're starting to get me stirred up and excited because it's really understanding the fruit and the reason why, in the root of why we're doing what we're doing and why it's important to bring in reconciliation, to bring in the purpose, to unify our people, unify the people of the nation and around the globe, understanding that the Purple Principles is not just about America, but reconciliation, love, unity is a global thing that I believe we can do. Because from Minneapolis, a lot of things took place. It was a ripple effect globally. And so I believe that from Minneapolis, something can be a ripple effect that is going to be positive, that can help shape, rechange, reform the nations for the better.
Yeah, no, I mean that it's true. I mean, there was so much that was going on, and I know that he was very, very active in anything that I can't even fathom. You know, we were talking about when this pandemic first started. You know, we were like questioning, oh, well, you know, what would Prince do? He'd probably be putting on a live concert every night on YouTube or something, and we'd all be sitting around watching and this, that, and the other. And then George Floyd happened, and the same question came to mind was, wow, and in his hometown, what would he have done here? What do you think that he would have done here?
I think that what he's always done and is give, whether that be musically, whether that be supporting the people behind the scenes. Van Jones is one of the people that is purple, and we love him dearly. And so supporting people behind the scenes, speaking out and bringing light. And so I think that that's what we are also doing. It's a love thing because, you know, the scripture says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. It's natural for someone when you see an issue is to not only fight for justice, but also give in some degree. So whether that be musically, lawfully, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or through a tweet, I think that he would be giving right now. And I think that that's what we can do together is give.
And the next question I had was from another Funkatopian, Cammie Malone Mattingly. She said she signed the petitions, and she says, as for questions, she said, as a white woman who has been trying to talk to family and friends about these issues, she's being called a racist because she speaks out against white Trump supporters. But she says, what words can she use to help them understand? I feel like I'm beating my head up against a brick wall. And I can probably add to that question because, you know, that question obviously has a little bit more of a political slant. But what can white people do because me personally, being obviously a white guy, I kind of feel like my hands are tied, because I feel like there's instances where even if I step out front and I say this is wrong, I'm getting it for two sides. I'm getting it from the Black community that says you don't have a right to talk about this right now. This is not. What can white people do right now? What can we do to be effective outside of signing the petition with the Purple Movement? What can we do to be effective and appreciated, and not feel like, we're just kind of coloring within the lines?
Well, I think it's a wonderful question, and I think that you're already doing that. And it's something that even Prince shared with me. Is I was frustrated because I was so excited about, sharing Jesus with certain people, and I just felt like I kept getting this backlash. And I'm like, if you had the best gift in the world and you felt like it was the best gift, why wouldn't you want for people to know? I'm not doing it because I'm trying to change somebody's perspective. I just want to share it. I get excited. And he said something to me that I never forget, and he said, "Ask questions." And I said, you know what? Oh, that's so good. I think that what you just did right there is ask questions. So that's one of the weapons that I use. Instead of saying a statement and trying to jump on the ship, I just start asking questions. And so that's one. Number two is being a swift listener. There's a scripture being said that says, be quick to hear and slow to speak. Listen to really, and I'm paraphrasing just other proverbs, if you may, is be quick to hear and slow to speak, but also it's also about why you're listening. It's understanding the root. Am I listening so I can respond, or am I listening to truly understand what's going on? Because at the end of the day, I heard someone say they're lucky that Black people aren't looking for revenge, but they're looking for equality. A lot of that is just wanting to be heard. And so I think that lending an ear and asking questions is a great start. From there, for me, I can't let either a Black person or a white person try to take my freedom or my voice, because I'm not for Black domination, neither am I for white domination. For me, I'm all about figuring out a way we can reconcile and come together. I stand before you as a Black man to the naked eye, but my grandfather is a white Jewish man. So and my mother that's her father. So I also have white in me. So I'm like a blend, if you may, but to the naked eye, I'm a Black person. They call us light skin, and I'm happy to say that. But the main thing is, I would want somebody just to hear and to listen, and then say, okay, with that issue, how do you think I can be effective to help you? You understand what I'm saying? Because to every Black person, it's not necessarily going to be the same exact issue, but it's going to be principally saying, hey, we want equality. And so at the end of the day, I think that each person is different. So to the lady who asked that question, depending on who you're talking to, you may hear somebody say, I just want equality. Somebody else might say, I want reparations. And somebody else might say, I just want a chance. At the end of the day, you're going to see some underlining things. Equality. I want to be heard. I want somebody to listen to me. I don't want to be mistreated. I don't want to be tried on the streets. And I don't want you to overlook the facts of the history of Black history in America. So I think that a lot of it is situational based, but a lot of it I think can be resolved and helped by listening effectively, really listening to understand, asking questions. And then from that place, if someone says, no, you can't help me, and I don't agree with that ideology. I do believe that we all can come together and help. But if you were to ask me, yo, Joshua, how can I help you as a white person? I'd say, hey, join me on this purple movement, because it's about reconciling the Black and the white, and speak about it and understand why you're saying this, because you're going to see all types of races joining in from people all over the globe. But outside of that, depending on who you're talking to, I think you can help somebody on the street. If you got a Black Lives Matter poster standing next to a Black person, they say, come along, then you're helping that cause. So I think ultimately it's about listening, asking questions, and then saying, how can I help you in this? It's really about selflessness.
Well, and I think that the plan for the Purple Movement is probably one of the most cohesive and obviously more well thought out plans as far as getting there. It's it's way more than just, hey, sign this petition and I'm going to hand it off to somebody. It's a plan of action. It is, here are the steps for making this happen. So I want to obviously take an opportunity, again, trying to be respectful of your time, and make sure that everybody knows that the website is thepurplemovement.org. Yes. And you can go and you can watch the 3 videos that are there that have, well, there's actually 4 videos, but you can watch the videos that are there to get a little bit more of an idea of the steps, the plan of action in order to kind of make it move, help it move forward, the thought process as far as the rules and the codes of conduct and things that are all laid out that are very, very specific, and sign the petition. And we have a couple more people that Dave Holloway says, done. He signed the petition. Reproduction of the new breed, stand up, organize. I have been a supporter of Prince from the very beginning, and I know how much he loved his hometown, and his heart would break. Hannah, Joshua, may our Father continue to bless you. I love you both. The only love there is the love we make. May we all live to see the dawn, and then a bunch of purple hearts.
Indeed.
Also, Karen Abrams said, signed. Josh is so on the right track. Peaceful, level-headed, addressing the important issues in the proper way instead of attacking and creating further division. He and Hannah make a great team and will make continuous progress.
That's so beautiful. I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so excited about people who understand the principles of the Purple Movement, of unity. The second policy, the great conversation, I'm especially fond of as well, because it empowers the community to have a voice. It gets people of all races, male and female, black, white, and brown together to say, I want to speak up for the community, depending on the ward I'm in. I just think that the CEA, the community elected advocates, people who can speak out in their community, the great conversation I just personally get excited about. And because I believe it's an opportunity for people to continuously have active conversation publicly with the government and just make it purple. Let's talk about it. Let's have conversation. Let's merge these ideas, And so I'm just grateful for everyone who's commented, like you mentioned, who's seen the police conduct, the great conversation, the racial ratio. And we're going to be adding policies. This is not something we just want to do for now. I already have something brewing in my heart concerning another policy that I'm going to be doing some great research on and make sure that it's well thought out and being able to simply portray. But I really believe in the power of reconciliation, accountability, awareness, and really making a change at the root of it so that when the fruit comes, we all can enjoy it and have a beautiful time together versus figuring out ways we can be divided. We have to make a change. We have to come together, and we can only do that together. We're all living on this same circle right now. Some might say it's flat. Some might say it's a sphere. At the end of the day, we all here. And so I'm just, that kind of rhymed. I like that. But I just really want to come together. And I believe this is just a start of something that is not just going to be happening when something's popular in the news. I believe we're here to stay, the Purple Movement, and that is just going to be an ongoing conversation. And hopefully the hashtag MAP is making the map purple, principally understanding that it's about just blending ideas, coming together, and having a public conversation about things. And I think you make a real purple change.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. And for those of you who want more information, you can definitely follow Josh and Hannah through You Will Be Done Ministries. You can follow them online on Tuesday nights. If you'd rather watch their show than tune in on Funkatopia Live, I'm perfectly okay with that. I am perfectly okay with that, absolutely, because I love Josh and Hannah. And also, if you want to find more information on the Purple Movement, again, it's thepurplemovement.org. Josh, thanks for coming on, man. I greatly appreciate it, brother.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been such a blessing to be here with you today. Thank you for continuing the legacy in a positive way with Prince, and the fact that one of his last tweets was about Funkatopia and one of my first interviews, and just coming back out into the world and showing some purple love. I just say thank you from the behalf of me and Hannah for continuing in a positive way, shedding some purple life and just love for one another. So God bless you, brother, and your family. And once again, thank you for your wife being an essential worker at such a time as this.
Even though that was one of his last tweets, that was one of many that happened. It seemed like every time I did a post, he responded or retweeted it or posted it on Facebook, and I was always terrified. And because when you know that Prince is looking over your shoulder every single time you post something on the site, it's terrifying.
Yeah. I know the feeling. I had to get used to him standing over my shoulder in the studio. That definitely wasn't something that was easy to get used to in the beginning. Yeah, I told you, he did send me something April 15th on Funkatopia, 2016. Wow.
Really? That's
it was
awesome.
Your review on the piano and a microphone. Yeah, 6 days before he transitioned, brother. Yep. It is the funk music for funk lovers, Funkatopia. It was your article on review, Prince, piano and a microphone, Atlanta. Yep.
Yeah, I went to both of his shows in Atlanta, and I got home after both of those shows. I was fifth row for the first show, the 7 p.m. show, and I was like all the way up in the balcony, last row for his final show. And it was amazing back there because the way that auditorium is, it's like a cone. It's like a sideways ice cream cone. And you're like in the bottom, that smaller part of the cone, and the sound just kind of comes in. And it was so much better back there than it was up in the fifth row, because everybody that was back there was very reverent and listening, whereas down closer were the screamers and everybody's trying to get Prince's attention. So I enjoyed being down there in the fifth row, but I really enjoyed it back there because it was just, there weren't people screaming around me. People were being reverent and enjoying the show. And I got home at like about 12:30 at night, and I debated about, do I post this? Do I go ahead and sit down and spend an hour and a half writing this review, or do I just go to bed and I'll write it in the morning? And I fought myself, and I said, nah, I know that Prince watches this friggin', I know he watches me all the time, so I better do it now and get ahead of it in case anybody else was doing it. And I did it, and then I woke up in the morning, and sure enough, he was there retweeting it and pushing it out. And the next thing I know, got the server guys calling me going, what's going on with your website? I was like, I don't know. So.
Tweeted it. That's what happened. Brother, well, I just want to say thank you, just on behalf of the time that I had with him, for him to either tweet, comment, or mention any article. I already know. I'm almost positive or certain that if he tweeted it, he already sent it to me as well. So, that just excites him. He was prolific when it came to research, and so in general. So anytime he found something that was tweetable and or something that he wanted to share, it meant something to him. So thank you for reporting things that were purple qualified, brother. And much for just putting out some quality stuff, reporting some quality things, enough for him to look forward to seeing what you say. And so I just thank you just while he was here, and I thank you now for continuing that and making sure that people hear about the purple movement. That's really important to me, because it's a bridge. That's why in the logo, there's a bridge. Whether you believe in Jesus like I do and love him like I do or not, this is a bridge, because this is about people and this is about reconciliation. So we all can think about, I have 3 children, think about the generation that my children will grow up and be a part of. So I think that this is so important for people to hear, and for you to want to report something like this and talk about it on your platform. I'm just grateful and I'm thankful that a fellow believer in reconciliation reconciliation and unity wants to say, hey, let's put this out. So thank you in advance for however you write about it and just talk about how it was with me. I enjoyed it myself personally, and I'll say that on other platforms and things of that nature. I enjoyed myself. So thank you for being one of the first people who reached out and wanting to talk about the Purple Movement. It's very exciting, and I look forward to it continuously growing. I believe it started with the seed, but it's already starting to be watered, and I'm starting to see the roots take place. And I just think that this grassroots movement ain't going nowhere. So thank you so much, man.
Well, I appreciate it once again, and we will definitely cross paths again, I'm sure.
Indeed.
All right. Good night, brother. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. God bless you, brother.
God bless you too. Adios.
Peace.